Despite a judge ruling that potentially damning emails would need to be released by next Tuesday, Scott Pruitt has cleared the Senate in a close vote and will be the next head of the EPA. Those emails will still eventually come out, but not early enough to potentially tank his confirmation. He won 52 to 46. That's with 2 Democratic senators, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, voting to confirm Pruitt. Susan Collins of Maine was the sole Republican to oppose the nominee. Remember, she also was one of only 2 Republicans to vote against Betsy DeVos as head of the Department of Education. Now, there was widespread opposition to Scott Pruitt in this position. There are many people that Trump has put up for various cabinet departments that appear to be philosophically opposed to the core mission of those departments, but no one has the documented history of being more viciously opposed to the point of an agency than Scott Pruitt. And not just in terms of things that he's said, but lawsuits that he's filed, people he's worked on behalf of, and actions he's taken in his own positions in government over the past few decades. I want to read a quote from Susan Collins because, of course, it's not often that we have Republicans voting against Trump's nominees. She said this: "I have significant concerns that Mr. Pruitt has actively opposed and sued the EPA on numerous issues that are of great importance to the state of Maine." She specifically cited his work to remove restrictions on airborne mercury emissions and cross-state smog. And as I alluded to in the intro, the vote came less than a day after an Oklahoma court ordered Pruitt to release thousands of pages of correspondence between his office and the oil and gas industry, saying Pruitt had been an abject failure to comply with Oklahoma's open records law, which is a nice tactic, but I don't think you're going to get the Republicans to care about something as silly as emails, Judge. But anyway, those will eventually come out. He's released a couple of hundred pages of them in the past, and we know that as a result of the little bit of disclosure that we've had, he's previously supported legislation that was word for word provided for him by the oil and gas industry. He's sent letters to the EPA that has been found out to be word for word provided to him by the oil and gas industry. And now he's going to be heading up an industry that is in many ways supposed to be in conflict with that same industry in terms of their mandate to stop certain environmental pollutants and things like that.
So we're going to talk about the most dangerous part of Scott Pruitt in a second, but let me emphasize some of the things that John mentioned and did not. So first, when you are in favor of mercury emissions in the air and you would not like to restrict them, okay, I'm a little concerned. I mean, if you've got, let's say it's LA where I live, my kids live, and he goes, nah, mercury emissions. Have at it, Hoss. I'm concerned. Okay, now, is there a reasonable argument to be made as to how much mercury emissions we should have? Of course there is, right? Now, is Scott Pruitt pursuing a reasonable path? Well, when you copy and paste oil industry letters and send them to the EPA, I'm not sure that you are really pursuing a reasonable path. And those same industries, by the way, gave a tremendous amount of money to the Republican Party in Oklahoma and to the attorney generals of across the states that were Republicans, and Scott Pruitt led that movement. So I'm sure, though, the millions of dollars they got from oil and gas, spearheaded by Scott Pruitt, had nothing to do with the fact that he agrees word for word with the oil and gas industry. And even he bragged about, and not only an Oklahoma state website, official state website, but on his LinkedIn profile, that he is, quote, the leading advocate against the EPA's activist agenda. So they took the leading activist against EPA and made him the head of the EPA.
At least he's a leader.
Yes. And so he's basically a paid agent of the oil industry. So probably among the worst picks there is. But the part that I'm most worried about is he says his priorities are to basically end the Clean Power Plan, which would restrict greenhouse gas emissions from power plants and incentivize renewable energy in the states. That's disastrous. And the Waters for the United States rule, which clarified bodies of water subject to the Clean Water Act provisions, also disastrous. But the worst of all, he, according to Republicans involved in the EPA transition, would consider closing the EPA's enforcement division, which means the EPA basically no longer exists.
Could take away the teeth.
Yeah, if you don't enforce any of your rules, what difference does it make that you have rules?
Yeah.
So his effort, apparently, according to Republicans, not according to us, is to completely shut down enforcement at the EPA, and hence that department is now completely useless.
I don't care for the work of the Starland Vocal Band. And therefore, it would be absurd to make me the director of the Starland Vocal Band. But this is what he's doing. This is what Trump's doing. It's what Reagan did to a certain extent. You know, and Reagan's head of the EPA, by the way, was the mother of Neil Gorsuch, his Supreme Court nominee. So this is an old trick out of the Republican playbook. Get somebody who wants to destroy an agency, and if you get elected, put that person in to run the agency. That's what Scott Pruitt wants to do. And by the way, all this went on while earthquakes were increasing. I was looking for the figure, but I'm not connected. Something at least 400% due to fracking. While he was
in Oklahoma.
In Oklahoma specifically.
Says scientists.
Right, say scientists.
It went up in 2011. There was 63 earthquakes. After fracking in 2016, there was 644. Now, it could be that was a wild coincidence, but I'm not so sure about that.
Or there could be pros to that many earthquakes, so we don't know.
And this was the guy suing the EPA to not do its job in Oklahoma. And now he's going to run the EPA. And they confirmed him 4 days before the emails come out.
Yeah.
2 Democratic senators did vote for Pruitt, Joe Manchin of West Virginia and Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota. And those are 2 states where I believe the Trump margin swung the most of any state relative to Mitt Romney's share of the vote in 2012. So obviously there's a big political incentive that Democrats in those particular states have to vote for certain Trump nominees, at least those that have to do with energy policy. And energy policy is what has seen to, converted a lot of historical Democrats to Trump in certain areas of the country.
Yes.
So, we think that the breakdown of the Senate is 52-48, but it really isn't. Joe Manchin is going to vote with the Republicans a great number of times, let alone Heidi Heitkamp and many others. And they're so afraid of Trump because of the phenomena that Michael just pointed out. And the reality is that isn't strength. What voters liked about Trump and why they voted for him, including in those states, is that he was strong and he was unlike a regular politician. So what are they doing now? Having learned all the wrong lessons, they're going, okay, I'm with the Donald, I'm with Trump, okay. That doesn't look strong. That looks incredibly weak. So then now you've said, okay, the Republicans are right about everything, and next time when I run against a Republican, vote for me. Hey, good luck with that strategy.
Yeah,
Those two are almost certainly going to lose. I hope they lose to Justice Democrats in primaries, and then we'll show them how you could actually run in those states. But if they don't, they're going to get slaughtered by the Republicans. Podcast The Young Turks anytime you want. TYTnetwork.com/join.
I think it's weird.
No, it's not weird. In fact, you'll think,
I'm like a smart person.
do it now. TYTnetwork.com/join.